On the day that the Cold Harbor file is expected to be completed, Mark and Devin meet up with Miss Cobell. So, Mark's absence from work alarms Dr. Mauer and Mr. Drummond, who reprimand Mr. Milchick for losing track of Mark. But surprisingly enough, Milchick stands his ground and asserts that he is not responsible for Mark's activities outside of the office, which is true, and it made for one of the most relatable moments in the entire series because, honestly, who hasn't wanted to tell their own boss to eat shit? But what's even more surprising is that when Mark calls work to explain that he just needed to take a personal day, Milchick does grant him the day off. So even though Milchick is clearly working for the bad guys here, it's interesting to see that his character does have a conscience of some kind. He has grown a lot over the course of this season, and I want to see how his character will continue to grow from here. Unfortunately, we didn't learn as much about Cold Harbor as I was definitely expecting to. I mean, Cobell explains that Gemma will die if Mark completes his work on the Cold Harbor file, but this information was already implied in previous episodes of the season, so I definitely felt like we didn't learn anything new here. And that was admittedly a little disappointing, but I'll expand upon that disappointment in a moment. Getting back to the events of the episode, Gretchen confesses to Dylan that she kissed his innie during a visitation session, and in response, Dylan threatens to quit, which would effectively end his innie's existence. Now, is it just me, or did that seem a little overdramatic to anyone? I mean, on the one hand, I kind of do see where Dylan's mistrust is coming from, but on the other hand, it's him. His wife kissed him. She's not cheating on him with anyone else. She's clearly still in love with him. Or at least, she's in love with the way that he used to be. I don't know, I admit that this argument is kind of a slippery slope, but it is still an interesting argument to have nonetheless. Either way, Gretchen later confides in Innie Dylan about their fight, and tearfully tells him that they must stop seeing each other. Heartbroken, Dylan submits a resignation form to Mr. Milchick, effectively ending his own existence anyway. And I wonder how outy Dylan is going to feel about this. Regardless, we also learned that Bert used to transport persons of interest for Lumen, as he broke into Irving's apartment and forced him to take a drive. That drive eventually ends at a train station, where Bert buys Irving a ticket and tells him to never come back. And while that entire trip would have seemed scary and threatening to me personally, Irving took it as a perfect opportunity to express that he's never been in love. That he's happy that his innie found love with Bert's innie, and that he too would like to start a relationship with Bert. I mean, I don't know if that felt weird to anyone else, but it definitely felt weird to me. And even more confusing is the fact that Bert seemed to reciprocate those feelings. Sure, he does send Irving off on the train, but he definitely seemed to be mournful about it, so I was genuinely confused by what was happening in this scene. Did Lumen send Bert to take Irving to some mysterious location, or was Bert simply acting out on his own and trying to protect Irving from Lumen? How does Irving trust Bert when the man literally broke into his house and admitted that he actively worked for the company that is known for being shady? I mean, where the fuck is Irving even going, and how does he plan on surviving? What about all the secret shit that he was doing? The paintings, the phone calls, the employee lists. What was it all for? Who the fuck even is Irving? I don't know, man, but as someone who was hoping to learn a lot more about his character by this point in the show, I was clearly a bit frustrated by his plotline in this episode. And this is why I was disappointed with the episode as a whole, because the episode spends a lot of time setting up the stage for the season 2 finale, but in doing so, this episode didn't provide us with a whole lot of substance. Now, yes, we did admittedly learn a little bit about each character, but given how this is the penultimate episode of the season, I definitely think that we could have learned a whole lot more. I mean, I didn't expect the episode to be as explosive as the penultimate episodes from Game of Thrones or anything, but it definitely felt underwhelming compared to Season 1's penultimate episode. Still, I was intrigued with where all of our characters ended up by the end of the episode, so I think the stage has been set for an interesting finale. Miss Wong is being sent away for completing her fellowship. Helly is greeted by her father while trying to memorize the directions to the exports hall. Irving is on his way to God only knows where. Dylan is basically committing suicide over his broken heart. And Mark is back at the birthing lodge with Devin and Miss Cobell. So even with how underwhelmed I was with this episode specifically, I do want to see how each of these storylines will come together to make for a satisfying conclusion. Because even though the episode felt like it was intentionally made for the sole purpose of teeing up what is to come next, I can't deny that I've been fascinated by all of the other episodes of the season thus far. So hopefully it'll be another good one, but I guess we'll see how the season 2 finale of Severance will actually turn out to be once it gets released on Friday.